I'm going to explain Bone Cage, which I find is a very good AoE skill in the early game with Occult to clear groups of enemies and also to support your minions, because you're going to pin the enemies and the enemies being pinned makes it much easier for your minions to hit them. And also it's very good as a defensive skill because you'll end up casting this, moving backward, and the enemies will get impaled on these spikes here and stop moving. So stopping the enemies from moving makes it also much easier to survive with your character. Now something to know is that unlike, for example, Ice Nova, that hits the enemies from your character to the edge of the effect, here it's really the enemies that are near the effect that will get hit. So if they were, for example, here, they will not get hit by the spikes. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think here the cage radius is the radius of the effect here, and the explosion radius, I believe, is the radius around the spikes at which the enemies must get to get hit by the exploding spike. So most normal sized enemies, like my character here, would get hit if you cast this, even if they are very close, because they will be at 1 meter from the edge to here. But for example, a very small dog like this, if he is here, he won't get hit. I'm going to show you later with the dog. And that size consideration is probably a reason not to get on the skill Magnified Effect, because you will get a larger cage, which means that there is more chance of having a small enemy really close to you in melee range that won't get hit. So having a smaller cage is probably better. Here you can see that I have two small dogs following me, and if I go really close, they are not getting hit by the spikes. And casting these spikes and running away is probably a pretty good strategy here. For example, if I go like this, and then I run, and they are just getting pinned by the spikes, I'm still running, they just stop there. And that's pretty good with summons, because, for example, if you have your skeletons and they die, there is you need to wait several seconds for them to respawn. So not only are you making something that is very defensive for your character, you're also saving time by pinning the enemies, which means that you have more time for the summons to respawn. Otherwise, it's a skill that has very high base crit chance, just like the other bone spells, so if you have anything that does effects when doing crits, is a great way to do the effects. It's a physical type of spell, so if you have wands that do plus level to physical spell skills, you can see here level 5, level 4, so it benefits from that. One last thing to know is that you can only have one bone cage at a time, so an idea I had was to just increase the duration of the cage so that you could spam cages while running away, so that the enemies will impale themselves like on and on and on, but you can only get one. So if I do this, I cast another one, the first one disappears instantly. For the support gems, I recommend the Lockdown to go all in on pin build-up, 20% more pin build-up. You already have plus 50% here, so that will make sure that you most likely pin an enemy on the first cast. That is very good. Otherwise, in the recommended ones, here you have Lacerate, but the problem with Lacerate, bleeding is based on physical damage, so that is fine because you're dealing physical damage, but bleeding scales with enemies moving. So 100% more damage if the enemies are moving, and the enemies won't be moving because they are pinned. So instead of looking at this one, I would recommend you check out the non-recommended gems for leverage. Supported skills have 50% increased critical hit chance against immobilized enemies. Pinned is immobilized, so that works here, and you already have very high base crit chance, so increasing that by 50% is very good. Otherwise, in the non-recommended ones, you could check out a concentrated effect to make the AoE smaller, but deal much more damage. And if the AoE is smaller, it means that there is less chances for enemies to be within the circle, so I think that could be good also, although you probably will hit less enemies at once, because you will have less spikes. Thanks for watching.